I'm Chris Direwalt, and this is Power Play. Internet, how you doing? We have talked so much about Republicans, about Donald Trump, about all of these things. We haven't talked a lot about Democrats, mostly because there hasn't been much to say. On the state level, they have been badly rolled back in the Obama era, as many as 1,000 seats on the state level. Their bench has been destroyed. They couldn't they couldn't hold the Senate in 2016. Their gains in the House were modest at best, and of course, they lost the presidency. So they haven't had much to say that mattered, but that's going to change. Who are the people and what are the directions that you think Democrats are going to take as they look forward? Will President Obama stay in the way? What about Clintonism? What about all of it? Well, people who probably can answer, and if they cannot, can at least make you laugh, will include Matthew Continetti. He is the editor of the Washington Free Beacon. The mullah, I believe, is where we ended up with you.
Mullah, vizier.
The vizier, mufti. The vizier, the mufti, the grand mufti. Never be the medium mufti. Be the grand mufti of the Washington Free Beacon. You also know and love Josh Kraushaar. He is the politics editor for National Journal and a pretty big deal. All right, Josh, I want to start with you. You've written some very interesting stuff about the choice that Democrats face in the broader sense. And in this way, we've got an election coming up in suburban Atlanta and other choices coming up as Democrats try to figure out what's the way forward. What do you see the choice for them basically as being?
So they have a choice of picking off a small slice of these moderate Chamber of Commerce, pro-business Republicans, if they can kind of keep the Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren wing, the very liberal wing, and where the energy of the party is a little quiet, or at least willing to compromise with the more moderate faction. But the conflict, the central conflict that Democrats are facing is that all the energy, all the activism is on the far left of the party.
Resist.
And, any mention of compromise, any mention of pragmatism is anathema to the people who are making the most noise. So, Democrats have this enormous opportunity in the age with Trump's presidency. They have a real path to take advantage of his unpopularity and the energy they have. But the people that are providing that energy are totally unwilling to compromise on anything to help them get closer to 50%. And that's going to be a challenge throughout.
So we're talking here, Matthew, about a juxtaposition essentially of suburbanites were the bulwark of the Republican Party in basically the Eisenhower and beyond era. These voters tend to be more affluent, obviously, and college educated and that stuff. This Republicanism was at Bushwood Country Club, and they were happy there. And now we see in those districts Trump underperformed, whether it was Atlanta, whether it was Houston, whether it was Dallas, and places where they had normally done well. But if you get enough of Erie County, Pennsylvania, if you get enough of Genesee County, Michigan, you can make up for it. Which way do you think Democrats should go? Do you go to try to pick off Republican leaners from the suburbs, or do you go back to the Rust Belt?
Well, the suburbs move toward the Democratic column precedes Trump, right? I mean, it's this long-standing realignment we have where voters with higher educations have been trending Democratic for some time. And was Donald Trump's famous line during the primary. I love the poorly educated. White voters without college degrees are his base, and they're sticking with him. Where are the Democrats headed? I think off the cliff. I've seen nothing in their behavior to suggest that they're aware of the political problems, or if they're aware of the political problems they face, that they're willing to confront them. You have a party that is basically a top-bottom coalition. The most wealthy, most established, highest status people in our country at the very top of the party, and then a real reliance on basically minority votes at the bottom of it. And the tensions between within that coalition, I think you saw emerge during the Democratic primary, and I think they're going to come back again when you look at primaries in 2018 and the Democratic primary 4 years from now.
Are there Democrats really who are vulnerable on a primary basis?
There are, though. I think the leadership of the party isn't quite as self-destructive as maybe some of their voters. There are two big House elections coming up, special elections, that kind of symbolize both strategies for the party. The one that you mentioned, Chris, in suburban Atlanta is a district that has been Republican for 4 decades. Newt Gingrich held it. It was sort of the base of the traditional Republican Party. Trump almost lost that district, and Democrats are putting a lot of money into it in this upcoming spring election. There's also a Montana election, and Montana, even though
it's a good one too,
leans Republican, but it actually You have a Democratic governor who won 2 terms. You have a Democratic senator. The populism that Bernie Sanders talks about on paper could be resonant in Montana. But Democrats aren't really excited about it. If you talk to Democrats, they may be talking a good game, but privately, they don't think that their nominee, who's a Bernie Sanders guy, plays a banjo, says all the same things as Bernie Sanders.
You got a banjo, man. I mean, that's something.
I mean, in Montana, so you got that. But because of these cross-currents that are taking place, Democrats actually are more optimistic about what's happening in a rock-ribbed Republican suburb in Atlanta rather than Montana, which is a state where they've had some success.
And I believe John McCain only won Montana by like 3 points. Yeah. It's not as Democratic of a state as people, or as Republican of a state as people think. What about Barack Obama, resident of Colorado, Washingtonian by choice now? Obviously, we know that Donald Trump and others say that he is running a cabal within the federal government, a soft coup. A soft coup is so much more comfortable than a hard coup. A silent and soft coup. Soft coup also was Matt's band name in college. But in reality, if he's hurting anybody, you could say it was the Democrats. By being around, by the presence here, we heard Eric Holder say he's coming, he'll be back soon, he's going to fight for redistricting on the state level. And I thought, at least have the decency to allow your party to crash and burn and rebuild itself. I mean, after all, that's how he became their nominee. That's how he became the leader of the Democrats, because they had to burn it down before they could build it back.
Well, one of the many things we learned during the Obama presidency is that Obama's personal magnetism and popularity does not extend to his party, that he was allowed to get away with quite a bit with the voters because of him as a public character. I mean, what he represented as the first black president, but also, just his demeanor. He was Obama's cool,
a politically gifted individual.
Exactly. Well, if you're a political party, you're going to want to have to evolve past models, right? So you're going to find the new thing. Who is their next Obama? The more space that the President Obama, and I just this week Joe Biden participated in a rally to save Obamacare. You have Hillary Clinton saying that she's ready to come out of the woods. Well, you were hardly in the woods, Hillary.
Right.
If I were Chuck Schumer, I'd say get back in there. But
it's still March, right?
This hasn't occurred to them, because the truth is they like winning, and who knows whether they're going to win this Georgia seat. They're getting a lot of hype. They want to be the party of the new upper crust.
Right.
And that's what they like. And so when you think about what the sacrifices they would have to make to appeal to the Trump vote, and not only the Trump vote, but the Obama Trump vote, which helped Trump win in a lot of these Midwestern states, I don't think the Democratic elite is prepared to make them.
But Josh, they 12 years ago, Democrats, a bewildered Democratic Party, looked at John Kerry's defeat, could not figure out how they had managed that, and said, God's guns and gays, we got to have Hillary Clinton or Mark Warner, we got to move to the right, we've got to do these things, and they nominated Barack Obama. And to Matt's point, he did a great job of energizing the Democratic coalition and all of that stuff. When I look at somebody like Kamala Harris, is it Kamala or Kamala?
Kamala.
Kamala?
Kamala.
We're all right. So we're all in on Kamala.
You have to imagine Oprah saying,
right?
Kamala.
Exactly. Kamala. That Senator Kamala Harris, former Attorney General of California, strikes me as the kind of person who could at least energize the left in the Democratic Party. Yes.
Yeah. Well, it was very symbolic, as Matt was talking about, that you had Joe Biden, and standing behind him was Jerry Brown, the two 70-something politicians,
and next to them is Nancy Pelosi.
Pelosi. I mean, this is the past aged, behind the curve
seniors
generation.
Menu in effect. Yes.
Now, Kamala Harris is someone who doesn't really have any real successes on her resume. She's someone who represents the diversity of the Democratic Party, but she would have a very thin resume if she wanted to run for president. Perhaps that's the ticket, because Obama had the same.
We're 2 for 2 for thin resumes and president.
Let me say something about Obama. Obama was a celebrity before he got here. Right. He was a celebrity from 2004, from the second he stepped on that stage and made the speech. And then the book came, and he was bigger than Washington. Kamala, She's in Washington now. That's bad. If you want to be president, you got to come from outside Washington.
Post-politics, all right.
So the Axelrod theory of presidential campaigns is that people are looking for the opposite of who came before. And Obama, because of his anti-war views and because of being the first African-American president, carried a lot of weight, was a perfect contrast to Bush. I think Democrats might actually be looking for someone, who knows, in a few years that has some experience, that has some gravitas. Al Franken is a name that's getting a lot of traction in the liberal side of the party. And
come on.
I actually think, he's denied any interest in the presidency, just like Obama did early on in his senatorial career. But he's someone who would energize the left and could make a case that he's from a Midwestern state and speaks to those populist issues.
And when I hear the word gravitas, I think Al Franken.
Well, but if you're running against Trump, maybe you want a comedian, maybe you want somebody who's funny. I don't know.
When was the last time Al Franken made you laugh?
That's a good, well,
if ever.
He made me laugh when the facial expression that he made when Rick Perry said to him, I hope you're as good to me out here as you were on the couch. Or I hope you're as much fun out here as you were on the couch.
That wasn't Al Franken. That was Rick Perry.
To be fair.
But there's a difference between making you laugh, and I agree, like Franken is not, he's actually tried not to be funny in the Senate, but these confrontations, these made-for-TV confrontations in our sort of new media age have all been on, played to his favor, the Supreme Court. And so I think the base, Elizabeth Warren is not as good of a candidate as people make her out to be. Who else is out? Bernie Sanders, he's going to be 78. There's a really thin list, and if there's a window for a celebrity who energizes the base and maybe doesn't totally repel the middle, I would not rule him out.
All right, so will you not rule someone out? Pick someone to not rule out.
Cuban.
Mark Cuban?
Yeah.
Billionaire v. billionaire?
Came through Washington recently. Was open to a challenge. He might, when you stare down that barrel, you might have second thoughts. They all do.
Shark Tank, though.
But he also he seems to be as much into himself as Donald Trump or Barack Obama. So that's typically a quality that you find in presidents. So if you had to choose between the Cuban or the Oprah, I would definitely say Cuban. I doubt Oprah would damage her brand by running
for president. I don't know. All right. Well, I know neither of you will, so you're safe in that way. You've done enough damage to your brand by being here with me today.
Yeah, our brands are long gone.
Long gone. These were roasted right here on Power Play. Guys, thank you for being with us. And you, Internet, thank you for being with us. And we hope that you come back for more Power Play real soon.